Guys, good Tuesday morning. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk here on the I Love CVille Network today, presented by Yes Realty Partners. Great to be with you on a glorious day to be above the mud across Charlottesville, Albemarle County, Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, and the world. A show that is dynamic and welcoming of your perspective, questions, comments, and commentary. If you'd like to participate, many of you know how. You offer that perspective in the comment section or across any of the social platforms you're watching the program upon. Judah Wickhauer is our director. Make sure you, I guess we'll go with the two-shot here, J-Dubs. And let's welcome Keith Smith to the show on a glorious Tuesday. Good morning.
Good morning, Jerry.
How are you?
You know, a couple of weeks ago I was screaming spring fever, and it feels like we're kind of back into winter again. It is a little chilly out there.
Going to be in the 70s today.
Oh, well, it wasn't
low 70s.
Well, I'll take it. A little bit of sunshine would be nice. So I just wanted to kick off. We've been talking about the last couple of weeks about how the market has been getting somewhat on par, right? The amount of homes coming on the market versus going off. And I did a little bit of post this morning. So the last 7 days, it's kind of gone the other direction again. We've only had 96 that came on in the last 7 days, and 155 went off. So that's roughly a 1.5 ratio. It's a little bit more than that, but I rounded it down. So, you know, we're tracking this weekly, at least I am, and we're just going to see what kind of impact that has on the market. But we did on Friday some ratios on quarter versus quarter, and there's some jurisdictions that are 30, 40, 50% off in volume of sales. So there's a bit of a balancing, I think, of the market going on, and it may be based on this Barron's article, this interest rate. So I'm curious to hear. I didn't get a chance to read it. Your feed on that.
Yeah. So spring break going on now for most of the public schools in the area. I would think spring break's going to influence with a lot of folks traveling, whether or not housing goes on the market in a for sale capacity. I know some of the places I enjoyed patronizing around the community have been quite empty, with families and friends and their children away from Charlottesville. The talk is, as we all know, Fed Chair Powell looking to get inflation very much under control. Politicians don't like inflation. Politicians have the ear of Fed Chair Powell. So
we don't like him either.
I don't think anyone likes inflation. The concern, though, is if the increasing of rates happens too quickly, whether that pushes us into a recession. We had Jamie Dimon, probably the most influential CEO in finance and banking, the CEO of JP Chase. He writes a letter yesterday, and Jamie Dimon, in a nutshell, says very big risk loom for the economy. He associates the CEO of JP Chase, Jamie Dimon, with three forces that are likely to shape the world over the next decade or longer. And that's the U.S. economy rebounding from the COVID pandemic, high inflation that will usher in an era of rising rates, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the resulting humanitarian crisis and pinch to supply chains. Jamie Dimon writes, and when Jamie Dimon talks, writes, or says anything, Wall Street listens, and they listen very closely. He wrote yesterday, the war in Ukraine and the sanctions on Russia at a minimum will slow the global economy, and it could easily get worse. That's because of the uncertainty about how the conflict will conclude and its impact on supply chains, especially for those involving energy supplies and energy markets. They present completely different circumstances, these three factors that we've experienced in the past, and their confluence may dramatically increase the risk ahead. He writes that letter, Jamie Dimon, and immediately it turns into news on every network and media outlet out there. Maybe no more influential person out there, save for maybe an Elon Musk, who just picked up 9% plus of Twitter.
I've been reading that. That's pretty impactful.
Yeah, Elon Musk is, now it's a passive stake of Twitter, but still when you're the largest shareholder of any company, and you're the richest man in the world.
Yeah, and
he's the richest man in the world.
Yeah, without a doubt. And his platform is such, you were saying earlier about that. I remember this is like an 80s, 90s thing. So folks that remember that. Remember the E.F. Hutton commercials, right? When E.F. Hutton speaks, the world listens. Well, when Musk speaks, people listen. It's news. And back in the days of E.F. Hutton, the only place you saw that was on the nightly news or at night on that stuff. This stuff, it's instant. It's showing up on your phone, on your Twitter and all that stuff. So when the man opens up his thumbs and his mouth and he tweets, it gets recognition.
No doubt. Now he's going to join the board of directors of Twitter. That news announced earlier today. 9.2 stake makes him the largest shareholder in the company. He swears it's passive, but I don't think anyone actually believes that. Interestingly, the money that he spent to purchase the 9% plus of Twitter stock represented about 1% of his wealth. 1%. This guy is that wealthy. So a lot of news that is shaping the mainstream cycle that then influences Main Street and us here in Charlottesville.
But there was a really good conversation you guys had yesterday as I was watching with Mickey Chambliss and Rob and Kerry on that end of it, that there was this conversation about the insulation of this area, right, on any type of change one way or the other. And I don't, the reality of it is if you were unfortunate enough to lose your home during the time of great unpleasantness, it wasn't insulating at all, right? But there is certain degree, right? The UVA, as much as it's a love-hate relationship, kind of keeps its little hand over the regional market here. So even though some of this national stuff is tweaking around a little bit, our lack of inventory is such that I just don't see that happening. I see things slowing down, right? I see inventory, transactions being less than it was in 2021. But let's face it, 2021 was off the charts.
Yeah,
right?
It was an anomaly.
It was off the charts.
Yeah.
And I'm looking more like 2018, 2019 as far as volume goes. But the prices are still going up, and they're being bought at that price point.
Yeah. I'm most concerned about the rising rates.
So when you say rise of rates, you're saying the rise of rates are short-term or long-term?
I'm specifically speaking of what rates associated with housing.
So you're talking about the 30-year?
Yeah, I don't. 5% is going to be a reality this year.
Yeah, I was actually running some numbers for tomorrow's show based on a 5% 30-year mortgage and what the impact on it. I don't have the data with me at the moment.
So what we got to ask ourselves is rising rates with no inventory, what that's going to determine to the local market. Because that's the future we're looking at, I think, in the next 6 to 18 to 24 months. Rates 5+, if not higher, and inventory not upticking or increasing.
So it was interesting. We both watched the city council meeting last night. I focused on the portion of it on housing affordability, affordable housing. I had to jump off for another meeting. I couldn't catch the second half of it. On that end of it, what's going? Look, let's call it like it is. What's going to happen? Interest rates are going to go up. The people that can afford will be able to either buy the rate down, right, or just absorb the extra payment per month. What it's going to do is it's going to take out this entry-level buyer unless they have a substantial amount of cash, right, where they can buy the rates down on that end of it, or come up with more cash to lower the actual amount that they're borrowing. So you're going to probably start seeing, as rates go up, the amount of cash buyers are putting down, instead of 0 or 3% or 5% or 7%. You're going to start seeing, I think, that pendulum switching back towards, as rates go up, more that traditional 20% down, right? It's just because then your mortgage payment is less, so your monthly payment is less.
Well, especially with markets. John Blair, hello. Kevin Yancey, hello. Nicholas Erpy, hello.
Thank you, Kevin, for your help, by the way.
This is a topic that we've talked about. Christopher Eagle, the always dapper Christopher Eagle, hello, and welcome to the program. This is something we've talked about, say, with the Erpies on the program. Markets are volatile. Stock portfolios year to date, I'm talking 2022, year to date.
Way off.
are down.
Yeah.
They're red. So if you have an opportunity to purchase real estate or to overpay real estate, and you know those rates are 5% plus, in this market, you're not certain you're going to get a 5% return on your money in the equities markets. So you're much more likely to take that cash and pay your housing off quicker or not take a loan because you're going to get stung 5% plus from an interest
I wish I had my
standpoint.
spreadsheets with me right now, because this is actually what I'm preparing for tomorrow's show, is exactly that. So as you well know, I ran now it's 21 year spreadsheet, right? And we're roughly year over year, this is of the whole car footprint, we're averaging somewhere between 5.5 to 5.6% year over year. And I actually ran some numbers, I just don't have them with me today, whereas let's assume it only increases half that, let's call it 3%. Right, and you're buying a home at $400,000 or getting a mortgage at $400,000, right? And you're doing 5% interest. What does that look like in 10 years, right? Because that's the question people are going to ask me, right? That's the question people are going to ask real estate agents. Well, if I'm doing this, what do you think it's going to look like 10 years from now? And this double-digit increases, it might happen this year, but after that, we're going back to the normal year-over-year appreciation rate.
Paul Hendricks watching the program, hell of a squash player, money manager himself. He says 5 stars for Jerry on that comment. Thank you, Paul Hendricks. I appreciate that comment. I mean, this is what I do know. What I do know is I am, and I'm going to get your take, fiscally conservative when it comes to the dollars I have. Mm-hmm. I work hard, and I remember 14 years ago when launching these businesses, they were much more difficult to make than they are now.
Oh, sure.
And I do know that if the equities markets are, and they will continue to be as volatile as they've been through Q1, I think that volatility is going to be well into Q2, maybe even Q3. We just don't know that return on our money is going to be that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hell, in 2021, it was 17, 18, 19%.
Yeah. So
you take that money and you hedge. And how you can hedge is buy real estate. Know that if you take it from a loan standpoint, you're going to be paying 5, 6 points on the dollar. Or you can just do all cash. And then your return on your money is significant.
So I personally, and until recently, and thank you to the Erpies, I recently always have been real estate heavy. It's just what I know well, right? But historically, over the 3.5 decades I've been doing this, as the stock market, I mean, you're an expert at this stuff. I'm really not. So, as the stock market kind of performance goes down a little bit, people start going to dirt. It's always been that way. And as the stock market starts doing a little bit better, people start coming out of dirt and start going back into the stock market because of this return scenario that you looked at. But for the average buyer that's buying their first home, historically in our area, we're increasing year over year. Now, you've got to stay in it, and you've got to be in it for the long haul, right? Because we had this time of great unpleasantness where numbers went backwards on us instead of forward. But if you sat in there, if you bought something in 2020, 2021, if you're sitting on it now, you've done very well. Maybe even outperformed the stock market. For that. I can't speak to that because I'm not a professional on the stock market, but I can tell you on the real estate end of it, if you do buy and hold, you will do well.
Well, I mean, think about it this way. How much did home values appreciate year over year?
Appreciate year over year? Again, I don't have that spreadsheet.
Ballpark, back of the napkin.
Yeah, so it's probably double digit. You're talking about 2021 to 2022 or 2020 to 2021?
Year over year.
Got it. It's probably double digits. It depends on where it's at. Again, I don't have it in front of me. I don't want to misquote it.
We know assessments in the city of Charlottesville on average appreciated 12%. That's the city of Charlottesville.
Yeah, it would be fair to say that the market appreciated about that same amount.
City of Charlottesville.
The numbers are different, though.
12% on average across the city. We know that 2022 to 2023, those numbers aren't going to go down. they likely, because of the housing shortage and the inventory shortage, will appreciate in similar capacity. We can't say with the same certainty that the equities markets will appreciate double digits year over year, 2022 to 2023.
So I actually did bring a spreadsheet with me from Friday. I can tell you, I just didn't do the percentage difference, and somebody who's smart that can do this. But in the city of Charlottesville, median sold, first quarter this year was 424, last year was 400. So we're up 24 grand. So whatever that percentage is, I need a calculator to do that. I'm not smart enough to do that. But the same with Albemarle County. Albemarle County went up 50 grand, 460 to 410 on that end of
Year over year.
Year over year, quarter over quarter, year over year.
So you're talking about a 50K appreciation.
So we had, and that's, we've got an article here that we're going to try to tackle on Friday about, are we in a bubble or we're not in a bubble? And that's the big difference.
You're talking a housing bubble.
Housing bubble, thank you. So that's the big difference. The big difference is the equity that people have in their home because of the market increases in it that way. Plus, the lending requirements are different, and it's clearly not going to happen. And mostly, people aren't over-leveraged, right? People were back in the time of great unpleasantness or prior to it. They were over-leveraging, and they were using their homes as a bank, and they were flipping it. We had this conversation on Friday. The whole reason why there's 60-day rule in it, you have to be in the house within, take possession within 60 days, is because people were flipping the homes before they even moved into them on that end of it.
More comments come in.
Yeah.
Boston University professor, he's a professor of economics. Lawrence Kutlikoff, am I saying his last name right there, Paul? An economics professor at Boston U. He says many people, this is from the professor at Boston U, would be better off rating their 401ks to avoid a mortgage. Paul Hendricks leaves that comment.
It's interesting to play off of that.
Some tax exposure with doing that.
Sure.
We should highlight that.
Yeah.
What was your thought there?
Well, it's interesting. So we were at a seminar, I guess 2 weeks ago, about market trends and where things were going, and the folks that are up there were talking, which was really interesting. It's a yearly seminar we do. We talk about market trends and so forth and so on. And prior up into this year, it was all about, build your cash reserves, build your cash reserves. They actually are saying, start spending your money now. Start spending your cash right now. Go out and buy investment property. This is for real estate agents and real estate professionals. And it was interesting, the two guests yesterday with Nikki, they were both saying, hey, we're looking to buy investment property. So when the professionals are starting to buy investment property.
That's my business.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that means
look at the rents. The rents have increased, just rent rolls have increased. You were interviewed by NBC 29 by this.
Yeah, I actually saw that.
13%, 14% in the city of Charlottesville.
Yeah.
The rents have increased 13 to 14%.
Yeah.
And then you get the appreciation on the real estate itself increasing about 12%. So you're double dipping there. And then you get the tax advantages associated with owning real estate. You're getting three little eggs in the Easter basket right there.
Yeah. So just so folks know, it's in the city of Charlottesville. The median. Hold on a second here. The median rental for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit is $2,300. That's insane.
Insane.
And if you do the math, even at 5%, you can buy a lot of house for $2,300. And we talk about this all the time. Most people buy their homes.
Rents are higher than a mortgage for not even just a starter home, but the next level up home.
Yeah, so that's the point I was trying to make is that even if the rates start climbing 4 or 5%, and I actually think they're going to settle down after this. At the end of this year, I may be wrong.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I hope maybe
Explain why you think it will settle down when there's going to be more students this fall than ever before, more staff hired than ever before.
No, I'm talking about mortgage rates. I'm sorry.
Oh, you think mortgage rates?
I think mortgage rates might stabilize a little bit at the end of the year. That's just based on some stuff I was reading. I have no data to support that. It's just a gut feeling on that end of it. But on the rental end of it, you're 110% correct. It's it's harder to find a rental than it is to to find a home, to be honest with you. It is really, really hard, but, perseverance pays off. You guys talked about that yesterday, but, it's just, I posted something, and we're going a little bit in the right direction here. It's a project out in Fluvanna County, Colonial Circle. They finally are pushing dirt. They actually are clearing. Just to talk about red tape and green tape and timeline on that, that's been 6 years in the making. So
Coming to market when?
Well, they've got a year, 6 months, 8 months, maybe a year of horizontal work to do yet, right before the roads are built, the infrastructure's put in before they go vertical. So they probably won't come to market until this year or this time next year, excuse me.
So we're talking a year from now.
If not more. I would say you're probably a year and a half out on that end of it. It's a substantial project. It's 325 units. There's a gas station that's approved on it, and a bunch of commercial, and so that this infrastructure has to be brought there, and it'll take an easy year to build it out. Now they'll phase it in, right, as the project moves along. They'll start bringing product online, homes online, but you're a year and a half out, so that's not helping.
No, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we're 18 months.
So it was interesting. I was
from new inventory.
Yeah, so I was watching, and Juan Diego Wade has agreed to come on the show.
City councilor
coming in on the 29th, and we're working on a second city councilor to fill that seat. Do a little bit of the state of the city, and then talk about affordable housing or housing affordability. But it was really interesting listening to that end of it. It was always wrapped around money, right? And I'm putting my land trust hat on, we were able at Spring Hill to put 11 units in the ground for about $250,000 cash. That's roughly $3 million in units, with 11 families that are 50% to 60% area median income and below. So yes, money's good, money's helpful, but the way we did that was reducing red tape and getting relationships done. That will move the needle along faster than money. I was a little disheartened, to be frank with you. You made a comment some shows ago that was spot on, that the institutional memory is gone.
Yeah.
And they're now revisiting and relooking at stuff that I was involved with years ago that just fell to the side.
Which one specifically?
Oh, everything from ADUs, using land trusts, it's just auxiliary dwelling units, land trusts, changing the zone. It's just unfortunate, and it's typical, right? When these things start getting over rotation of staff, and we know that this has been a bit excessive at the city, right? Just to say the least. That's what happens. That's the result. That's the result of it. That these projects or these initiatives then get rebooted again, and we go through the same process again. I was appointed 4 years ago to be on the ADU committee, auxiliary dwelling committee for the city, and they still have not retooled their ordinance and their rules for auxiliary dwelling units. The primary thing they need to get out is the owner occupancy requirement. But I was a little disappointed. It was great to see it. Great to see the level of professionalism is back, but we're revisiting stuff that's already been visited.
Neil Williamson, president of the Free Enterprise Forum, is watching the program.
Thank you, Neil.
And keep the comments coming in, guys. He says, in yesterday's Charlottesville City Council work session, our housing market affordability was compared to Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yeah. So that's the reason why in all my discussions, I'm changing the conversation from affordable housing to housing affordability. That is what I'm doing, because it impacts everything across the board. To go back to your 5% mortgage thing, look, there's enough buyers in the pool versus inventory, unless there's some magical thing that happens and we're all of a sudden thousands and thousands of units.
That'll never happen.
Yeah, so the lack of inventory is going to be the lack of inventory for a long period of time.
So walk me through this, and Kevin Yancey, Kevin Yancey, King of Waynesboro watching, says the red tape should be way, way less, 100%. Walk me through this scenario. Walk me through a scenario of increased rates and no inventory.
Yeah, well, that's what I was trying to get to. It makes this housing affordability even harder, almost impossible, because, as I said earlier, what's going to happen is if I've got the cash, right, then I can buy down rates, right? I can do that. I can buy a quarter point down, a half a point down. That's just cash. That's just money, if that's important to me. Or I just put more cash into it, and my mortgage payment's a little bit less, so my monthly payment gets to the point that I want to be at, right? So what'll happen is the cash buyer, or the people that have the ability to do that, right, will do that. They will buy the homes. The pool is so shallow of inventory, they will just buy the homes. Who's going to suffer? It's a gentleman you had yesterday on your noon show, which was a great interview, by the way, right? The police officers, the people that serve us every day, the people that take care of us, the nurses, the teachers, right? They're going to, as we talked 100 times, they're going to be out on the outskirts.
Rising rates, less inventory, assessments increasing because there is no inventory. The assessments increase supply and demand because people are paying more for the housing because there's less of it. Tax rates talking about going up. Personal property taxes going up.
Well, that's the real big conversation.
Inflation going up. Mm-hmm. I mean, eventually inflation will get in check, but that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, but that's exactly what's going to happen. The buyer who can afford this will be able to afford it, right? And the inventory is so lopsided. I mean, we just looked at it. It's 1.5 units coming on. It's not even at par at this point. There's just not enough inventory coming on. And it's, a shout out to Neil. It's more homes for everybody, right? That actually works. Interesting comment from Kevin. And it's something that was a little disheartening to me when I was watching the city council work session on that end of it. So part of what I did for the city when I went out there to Portland and Seattle, and they've adopted this, what they have done, if you have an affordable housing project, right, and you check all the boxes, right, whatever those number of boxes that they've created, you float right to the top. You get an expedited approval. Not only do you get an expedited approval, Jerry Miller is the staff member that gets appointed to that project. And he helps, or she helps, get that project through. And since they went through the streamlining process of it, they are many units short, right? But what they've done is they've adopted this, and they're starting to eat away at it a little bit. Something simple as that is to say, okay, if you got an affordable housing project and you check all these boxes, you don't have to have a sewer connection fee, right? There's just little things that they could do now that could help move this needle forward. For whatever reason, it seems to be a struggle to get there. I think Albemarle County will get there long before the city does, by the way. I think they really are starting to look at it from that perspective.
We should ask this question. And the president of Ukraine, guys, is live now on many networks.
Yeah.
As markets bleed red. We should ask this question.
You have to say an extra prayer for those folks because they need it.
What happens if you have a global recession? We're talking economic global recession at a time of massive housing shortage. Yeah,
so that's a great question. I mean, way above my pay grade on that end of it. And a lot of the last time something like that happened, there was a couple,
Last time that happened, there was not a housing shortage. Last time that happened, 08, 09, 010, we had a glut of new construction.
Correct.
So we had a recession, depression.
So I'm thinking the 70s.
08, 09, 010, 08, 09, 10, it was recession with too much housing inventory.
Yeah, so
this one's leading to recession with not enough housing inventory.
It's going to go back to the people who's got the cash. Right? That's what's going to happen. I don't look, I think I read a report, we kind of bumped it a little bit. We were at one point a couple of years ago 5.5 million units short. We're probably somewhere around 4 million. So we ate about a million and a half into that going into the right direction, but we're still millions upon millions upon millions of units short. So what's going to happen what happens in recessions? What happens in economic downturns? The people that have the ability, right?
Are opportunistic.
Are opportunistics. They're
Yeah.
going to go ahead and who's going to suffer is everybody else. And that, to be honest with you, and I'm glad you brought this up, that was what I was running through my head because I was really deflated watching this because we as an area had an opportunity to really get in front of this a few years ago. And unfortunately, I think this pendulum is going to swing at some point, right?
Swing which way?
Well, eventually it's going to swing. The markets always change, right? They always change. They go up and down. That's the way.
So the buyer's market, not seller?
Yeah,
is that the swing you're saying?
Yeah, it's eventually going to swing. It will eventually swing to a buyer's market. The question is when, Jerry. That's the when. That's the crystal ball question, right? Is it
For it to be a buyer's market, we need substantially more inventory.
Absolutely. We're like in a month and a half of an absorption rate. You need to be, depending on how you talk, to 4 to 6 months. I think we're closer to 4 months in our marketplace to make that swing. But eventually it's going to happen. It always does, right? It's just a matter of, is it 1 year from now or 5 years from now at this particular point in time? So eventually it'll go there, right? And eventually, we're going to have to develop the skills, redevelop the skills to go ahead and do that. But man,
Go ahead.
I keep on glancing over at this bubble article that we're going to tackle on Friday, and there's going to be a bubble for a certain buyer and type, right? I think that's where this is going, and I think the folks that can bring the cash to the table or have the fiscal ability to do it, it's not going to be a bubble for them.
Let's talk about the swing to a potential buyer's market.
Sure.
And Kevin Yancey, we'll get to some of these comments here. Jennifer, we'll get to your comments here. The swing to a potential buyer's market. Maybe that happens. But in the short term, 12, 18, 24 months, the inventory pinch, the lack of inventory, is going to drive assessments of these homes
So the question,
so high that the taxes associated with them are going to price people out. The increased rates are going to price people out.
all it's going to do is price out a certain price point.
Yeah,
right?
first-time home buyers.
Oh yeah, I think that's so. I think it's fair to say, depending on the region, that's kind of not there anymore, right? It's not in the city of Charlottesville, right? It's not.
Millennials and younger have
and they're the biggest buyer profile.
and millennials and younger have
They're almost 50% of the market.
a nearly, unless you're super deep pocketed, have an extremely difficult road ahead of them when it comes to purchasing a home.
First quarter Charlottesville medium list for 413, Albemarle 453, new construction Albemarle 680, Albemarle single family attached almost 500, 468, Fluvanna County, no new construction, 314. A year ago it was 260. List price. Fluvanna County, new construction, jumped 90 grand, 390 from 299. Greene County, 333 to 325, so that's a little close. So that's kind of where we're going, but it's still in the 300s. Nelson, 444, 425, it jumped roughly 20 grand. The only bright spot is Kevin's home space. Waynesboro, right? Waynesboro was a substantial jump, but the current median list price is 230. Last year it was 190. Right, that's a 40 grand jump, but at least on that
Substantial.
That is a substantial, but you're still over on the other side of the mountain. You can still potentially get something in the 230s and the 240s, and I want to thank Kevin for his input. But if I was 20 years younger and developing, maybe 30 years younger, I mean, that's where I'd be in a heartbeat. I'd be on the other side of the mountain, it's just, to me, it just makes all the sense in the world on that end of it. But look, that's what's going to happen. I might say something that's going to get me into trouble, and you love it when I do that. So here's a concern that I have. Because right now, this rubber band is growing out, right? I literally had this conversation with a client yesterday about Buckingham County. It's growing out. They want to go into Buckingham County. They want to buy in Buckingham County. And the conversation that we had was at a certain price point. And when I figured out their math on the driving and gas and all that stuff, we sat down and did that if they were going to spend about $75,000 more closer to Charlottesville and cut their driving time in half, right, they balanced out. But my real concern is what's going to happen on these other end of the rubber bands. What happens, you just hired me, Jerry, today, right? And let's say your business a year from now is not doing well. First in, first out, last in, first out, right? That's what I'm worried about in these outer markets. And I'm not trying to poo-poo Buckingham or some of these other counties, but if I'm out there doing this, the places that are going to get impacted the most, if and when something happens, let's assume this article is right, there is a bubble out there, those are the ones that are going to get hit hard.
And the article he's referencing is what?
Yeah, so it's from the Fed, it's from the Dallas Fed, that it's called Market Monitoring Finds Signs of a Brewing U.S. Housing Bubble. And I don't necessarily agree with most of it's in there, but also I'm not a Fed member, but I don't think so. I think where the housing bubble is going to impact folks on the rental market and all that stuff is on these outer areas. If and when something happens, that's when it's going. But we've been talking about this about Waynesboro forever, when it was $4 worth of gas, and I was sure as hell wrong on that.
So the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas has indicated that housing prices have become unhinged from their fundamentals.
Well, it's unhealthy. There's no doubt about that.
The Fed Reserve Bank of Dallas says the housing market has been showing signs of exuberance for more than 5 straight quarters through the third quarter of 2021. The Dallas Fed found using a measure it created to detect fever pitch conditions, exuberance occurs when home price growth exceeds what certain economic factors, in this case rent, disposable income, and long-term interest rates, would justify. The Fed says of Dallas, while this abnormal behavior hasn't been since the boom of the early 2000s, it doesn't necessarily mean a housing bust like the one preceded the Great Recession of 08, 9, and 10. It's an interesting article.
It's really interesting. I pulled it up this morning. I literally have not chance to scan it other than this morning. But here's I've gone on the record on this stuff, right? So the reality of it is, when back in the insane days, people were doing this with no equity. They were doing it with no cash,
and there was a glut of inventory.
There
was a glut of inventory. It's different than now.
That's the important thing. Just like the statement I made on Channel 29, right? It's economics 101, right? Supply and demand. There's just not enough supply. What the question becomes is who is getting shortchanged on this process, and it's this entry level buyer, and it's an interesting debate that you and I can have. The problem is with nearly 50% of the millennial buyers being the ones that are buying homes now, and that number is going to climb, right? They are the first-time home buyer for most part, right? You don't see too many millennial move-ups, right? They're generally they're buying their first home. So who's the buyer profile? What do they look like? What is their jobs? What income do they have? All that stuff is yet to be looked at on that end of it. But if you have this pent-up demand, something's going to give. That's where the bubble is. I think the bubble is the pent-up demand on inventory. I may be wrong, but that may not make a lot of sense. But
other data points from this article with the Dallas Fed: the national median listing price reached $405,000 for the first time in March of this year. That's data from Realtor.com.
So we're higher than that in Charlottesville.
That national median list price of $405,000 was up 13.5% versus March 2021, and was up 26.5% versus March of 2020. So national list price, 2 years, March 2020 versus March 2022, a 26.5% delta. One other data point that you should consider. Record low inventory levels and stiff competition have also added pressure on surging prices. Housing supply listed on the market fell in March of this year 18.9% versus a year ago. And listen to this number. Housing inventory, the listings that are active nationally, were down 62% over a 2-year period of time. 62%.
So quarter over quarter, Albemarle County is down 32%. These are not listings. These are actually units that sold. They're down 32%. City of Charlottesville was only down about 8%. The largest is Albemarle County new construction, single-family detached. They were down quarter over quarter, year over year, 60%. So we're starting to feel that, right? We're starting to feel that, frankly, in our businesses, our side of the table, the real estate side of the table, because there's just when you start looking at 30, 50, 20% decreases in total volume. The Greene County was up, believe it or not, 38%. But that was only 3 units. So, but it was up 38%. And I believe Waynesboro was also up. Waynesboro was up 31%. So Albemarle County was down 31%. Waynesboro was up 31%. And that's kind of what the conversation we've been having. This is what we're going out there. But you're going to see the percentage of transactions decrease. I think you're going to see that number climb. It's still not going to impact the inventory shortage, right? Because one could say if there's that many less units being sold, right, then maybe there's less buyers and the inventory is potentially adjusting itself a little bit. That's not the case. When you start looking at a 1.5 ratio of listing versus pending, that's telling me we've got a bunch of people in the market looking to buy.
Neil Williamson, we appreciate your comments. This from Daniel McDougall, DMAC. We love when you watch the show. This guy's in the finance and mortgage business. Perspective helps in these times. In the greatest housing meltdown of all times, 65% of the foreclosures happen in 5 states. There will be an issue for sure in our area, but it will be mild compared to other areas.
Yeah.
For sure. The
Yeah.
protection of the University of Virginia.
Yeah.
And if you look at some of the data points, one of the largest congregations or aggregations of multi-millionaires, I'm talking 100 millionaire plus, is in this Charlottesville, Albemarle County area.
Always been. It's always been. As long as I've been here, it's always been. It's always been, a high net worth individual location. Interesting stat, somebody can Google that. Take a look at, I think it was 2009 or 2010, how many foreclosures were in the market. I know we joked about this about marriages, but it was on, it was on par. I think it was like 3 million foreclosures versus 3 million marriages, just to put a little bit of a perspective to it on how bad it was back in that area and back in that time. Our area was not insulated from it. You pick up the phone and call up folks like Bill Tucker and all this stuff. They had short sale departments. I will tell you, we've done dozens of them during that time frame, which is, talk about a set of skills to get something to the closing table.
Brutal deal to do.
You're negotiating with 3 individuals to get it, the lender, the buyer, and the seller. So
yeah.
It's extremely complicated on that end of it. I'm not sure, but so we'll see a little bit of that. I think what'll happen on short sales, or I don't think you see short sale and foreclosures, because what's going to happen is if I can't make payments on my thing and I go to my bank and say, look, I can't make payments, first they're going to say put it on the market and sell it, right? Because there's no inventory. As you noted, back in the time of great unpleasantness, nobody wanted inventory.
Yeah.
The bank didn't want it, and then it became a whole thing. And the foreclosure department never spoke to the short sale department, and it's a very, I don't even want to get into it. It's extremely complicated.
I mean, guy who reads a lot. I'm seeing no doubt a recession happening. One where
actually,
inventory.
I think we're in one, to be honest with you.
One where inventory is not going to improve, and once that recession happens and the inventory doesn't improve, that's going to drive up the little housing stock even higher from a price point and make it even more difficult for millennials to buy. Mustache Dan Pettit, realtor himself, tremendously respect Dan Pettit. He's seen quite a bit in his time. He says when it switches to a buyer's market, I think a $500,000 home will end up selling for $450,000 as in most places because of the overbuying nature of what's happening.
I hate to ever disagree.
I respectfully disagree with him as well.
Yeah,
I respectfully disagree with that.
Yeah, I don't. If you put it to the lens of what happened in the time of great unpleasantness, that makes sense. But again, so just to put it in perspective, prior to that, right, prior to the time of great unpleasantness, the builders were building anywhere between 1.25 to 1.5 million units a year. They did that for 10 years in a row. Pardon me, 10 years in a row. It dropped during that to hundreds of thousands of
because many of those builders
went away.
Evaporated.
They evaporated
because of the recession.
They evaporated. So not only did they evaporate, and part of the problem we're struggling with right now is the lack of tradespeople. What happened was I was a drywall guy. Instead of hanging drywall and sucking drywall dust down, I went to Walmart and got benefits. I got $20 an hour, 15, but whatever it was, and I got
better hours inside and in air conditioning.
Yeah, not having some crazy contractor, developer, builder screaming at you. How come the work isn't done? Right. So that's what happened, and it went away. That and difficulty of getting projects done. I'll leave the name out of it, but there is a large national developer and builder that I was having a conversation with about doing something on the other side of the mountain. And all the numbers added up. Do you know why they won't do it?
Can't find workers?
They can't find workers.
Yeah.
They don't have the workforce to build the developments and build the homes. They don't have it. They have the engineers and they have all those kind of things, but they don't have the carpenters. They don't have the plumbers. They don't have the electricians. They don't have that. They're actually importing them from all over different areas.
Well, I mean, there's and this has always been the case, but even more so now, the migrant home builder, the migrant tradesperson. I mean, normally we know the migrant worker associated with farming as they travel the seasons around the country. I mean, some of the folks we're repping are.
Well, that's what I just alluded to. That's exactly what they're doing.
Migrant drywall guys.
They're looking at that, but I've been through this drill before, right? And I remember when inventory was low and subcontractors were low. My job was to keep an eye on my guys to make sure Jerry didn't come in and steal them from me, and that's literally what's happening. But there's just simply not enough, qualified people to build. It takes. We just talked about it. It took 6 years to the point that they're pushing trees down at Colonial Circle.
This is in Fluvanna County, a new development.
6 years. It took 6 years. The amount of money that it cost.
I mean, so this is government that made its own bed. This is local government that made its own bed.
They tend to do that, right? Government kind of does that. Talk about pendulums, right?
It can't get out of its own way.
And I'm not
throwing anybody under the bus.
I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. It's just the nature of the thing. The old joke about how does two bureaucrats change a light bulb?
How's
right?
that?
One bureaucrat unscrews it, the second bureaucrat tries to screw it back in a water faucet, right? So it's just the nature of the way it works. But unless there is some really forward-thinking, damn the torpedoes thinking, right, to change some of this red tape into green tape. I've been talking about this till my face is blue, red, green, blue. On that end of it, we're going to have this conversation
For years.
know,
Another 10 years.
I unless you kick me out, I intend to be doing this across the table from you for at least another half a decade.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to have the same problem a half a decade from now. I really do.
Daniel McDougall also disagrees, and he says we have too many people that are qualified for the $500,000 price point to see any downward movement at that price point. So McDougall agrees with us.
Yeah. So the question I would have is, with the increasing of the rates a little bit, is the credit requirements changing? Are they getting more stringent? Are they getting looser? Because that's
a good question for Daniel.
I think that's what I'm trying to do. So is he starting to see the credit requirements change? Because back in the day, we talk about this all the time. This cup of coffee could have bought a $500,000 house, right? So if they meaning the regulators keep this requirement up, then that lack of inventory, lack of people to build new houses, taking too long to get through it, is just going to keep this market basically leaning towards the folks that's got the.
I don't want to see the credit requirements change, though.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they need to be in place, and they need to be stringent, and they need to be honest, and they need to be completely opposite from 2008, 2009, 2010. Because if you start loosening the credit requirements, you're just going to get more buyers in the mix. And the last thing you need right now is more buyers in the mix.
Yeah, well, I think the buyer pool is the buyer pool. It's self-generating, right? The millennials are just coming to age. This buyer pool is just going to be there.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no way to control that, because that's already happened. Right. What you can control is trying the inventory. But one of the things I did look at when I was crunching numbers, just the city of Charlottesville, I looked at what the median list price last quarter versus what it sold for. So there's about a 2.7% difference. So they were selling about 2.7% higher than the list price. By the way, the year before they were at zero. They were flat. They weren't doing that. So the one that had the largest increase on that would be the city of Charlottesville. They had an increase of roughly 2.77%. The rest of them were somewhere between 0 and 2. Interesting, Albemarle County had a decrease in new construction. No new construction, excuse me. In 2021, they were actually selling about 2.4% under list price, but that was kind of a residual. I think some people were doing seller concessions that were still in the marketplace 12 plus months ago. Those contracts, because of new construction, would have been anywhere between a year to year and a half back. So it was kind of the beginning of the. This
is from Daniel McDougall. Look for the agencies to gradually reduce requirements to increase the buyer pool where it makes sense.
Any idea what they might be?
Why do you think that will be, Daniel?
And what will why
do you think that is? Why would we want more buyers now? I mean, I understand the thinking is you want people to have a chance at the dream of home ownership. He says, bank statement loans have been increasing rapidly as self-employed borrowers find it difficult to qualify under Fannie Mae guidelines.
Yeah, so that's a great point, right? So you probably know this. Self-employed, small businesses makes up a huge percentage of our economy, right? Right, it's not always big companies, and that's very interesting. So Yonna and I, thank God, and thank everybody that helps us, to include everybody at this table in this studio, are doing well, right? But I can't borrow money, right? It's very difficult for me to borrow money because of my time of great unpleasantness, right? That I don't care what anybody says, that tax along with you for the rest of your life, it never comes off. So the point is Mr. McDougall doesn't have a product to help me out. I've got cash flow. I can prove cash flow. I can prove profit. I mean, I can prove this can work. But he doesn't have a product.
You could borrow money depending on the case.
Yeah, but I don't want to pay 6, 7, 8% for it either.
Well, or you just go more cash to the table for the deal. I mean, you'd have to
I've even looked at that. That is also extremely difficult to do.
25-30% you could do.
Yeah,
Because you're locking in equity right off the bat.
Yeah, the guys are a lot smarter than me, and that end of it can do that. But under certain circumstances, it's difficult to do, small business owners or people that are doing 1099s, right? And a lot of people do 1099s, right? A lot of people do that. I know all real estate agents do it. We've got 1,200 of them, 1,300 of them. How many?
He says the pendulum swung too far in one way.
Yeah.
Now it needs to come back slowly, and that's why requirements will loosen. He says,
I agree with that, by the way. I think the federal government, the regulators, will loosen it up a little bit.
bank statement loans, high fives with great credit and 20% down, you can borrow money. High fives with great credit and 20% down.
Yeah, high 5%, so it's between 5 and 6%. Yeah. So if I'm at 3% now and everything is working out great, why would I do that? Why would I go buy something?
I mean, because you're getting
Because Mrs. Smith said so? Is that
well,
the
I mean,
answer?
you're getting an appreciation of 13% on the house, and
Yeah.
rent's going up 15% year over year.
Yeah, our cash position is very good on our home.
Daniel McDougall, good stuff right there. So this question's come in, which is intriguing. So you guys are basically saying, this is Jennifer, I love when you watch the show. She just speaks things very frankly. So you guys are basically saying, those of us that are on the fence now will be on the same fence next year.
Yes, and maybe yes, maybe no, yes, right? Jennifer, I would encourage, like was discussed yesterday, I would encourage you to buy if you can, if you're in that position, because interest rates are going to climb up. You can talk to Scott Morris, right? They have this qualify to you buy, or I can't remember the terminology on it.
Lock and shop.
Lock and shop. Thank you. Where you lock in a rate. If the rate goes down, you go ahead and get it. I think it's for 120 days, something like that. And that's kind of what I want to talk about tomorrow. So if you buy a home today and you do a $400,000 loan at certain interest rates in so many years, this is a reasonable expectation based on 21 years of trends on what it's going to look like 10 years from now, right? So we're going to have that data tomorrow. I just didn't bring it with me today on that end of it. So my answer to you, Jennifer, is now's the time to buy. A year from now, it's going to be different. Rates, I'm thinking rates might come down a little bit. Maybe I'm wrong, but inventory isn't changing. The homes are going to get more expensive quarter over quarter, year over year, month over month.
Kevin Yancey, the tradespeople got screwed, and that's why they got out of the business.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I was being a little nice about it, but yeah, I mean, they just said, well, why am I going back to this line of work when I can do this? So that's what happened, and we do a horrible job. A horrible job, and one of my rules is not to point fingers, but I'm kind of breaking that a little bit. We do a horrible job with vocational training around here. Horrible job. Horrible.
Kelsey, how many of the agents have left the profession like the tradespeople left the profession?
So if you look at the cars count, we're growing month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year.
Bananas.
Yeah, I have to be a little careful about that, going down that road, but yeah. So let me get.
There's more agents in car now than last year.
I believe so, yeah. So let me get this straight. Albemarle County, I got 32% less sales, and I've got more agents. Somebody do the math on that end of it. Tough business. We're probably the most competitive.
I said it's you guys in restaurants.
Yeah, I would think we probably top restaurants on that end of it.
You think? There's a lot of restaurants out there.
Yeah, I know. I picked up Yonna from the train station last night at 7:30.
Where'd you guys go, Orzo?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Orzo's great.
I love Orzo.
Ken and Charles do a great job.
Yeah, they just do a great job, and I'm a pasta snob, and it's a simple, very simple meal. It's a spaghetti marinara, and it's just off the charts. And one of my pet peeves is when you go to eat and you can't get pasta al dente. It just drives me nuts on that end of it. And it's always good. Had a nice glass of Chianti, and reconnected with my better 7/8, which I have not seen in 4 days. So Smith is back to normal a little bit.
I love it. This is a real world example from Daniel McDougall for you, Keith. I had a client that only showed $60,000 on her tax returns on a multi-million business.
Oh, yeah.
Using cash flow, bank statement loan, the underwriter allowed for $66K per month income to be used to qualify. She closed last month at 4.875%. Was turned down by the bank that handles her business account.
The turn down by the bank doesn't surprise me. I have I'll leave the bank name out of it, but I have
They're the most conservative lenders, or I should say the least creative lenders, the banks.
So that's the route I was going to go.
Least creative.
I have a friend of mine who's a president of a regional bank, and he says to me all the time, Keith, if you think we're the smartest people in the room, you're wrong. We're usually the dumbest. And I asked him, why did he say that? He says, well, think about it. What we do is if we're driving down the car, we're always looking in the rearview mirror. We never look in front. You know, these type of folks, they're always looking. So if you're going to go get a loan, what do? 2 years of past tax returns. They never look at what we're doing here is crystal ball and saying, okay, what is it going to be? They don't forecast going forward. They're always looking backwards. And that's not my words. This is a buddy of mine who's a president of a bank. Because I was asking him how this was back in the time of great unpleasantness. How did this happen? And, that was his answer.
How many martinis? Questions being asked for you there.
Who asked that question?
Mr. Yancey did.
I started off with Hendrix Martini and switched over to a nice Chianti.
So one martini and a glass of wine.
That's it.
Very nice. That sounds delicious.
And had a little bit of their, if you haven't had it, it's really good. Their Spanish oil, olive oil cake is just like off the charts good. I weighed myself before I went to pick Yonna up yesterday morning, and the 4 days she was gone. I lost like 5 pounds, and I was like, cool. Gained them all back last night.
I'm tagging Charles and Ken of Orzo.
Yeah, man, they're just outstanding people. That's it's hard. It's hard to pick a best spot in this town. It is hard, and it's like, I don't know if you and your wife do this, and it's just like, well, where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to go?
That's
pretty hard.
We have an abundance of riches here.
I normally break it down by, okay, so what are you in the mood for? What kind of food you're in the mood for? And if it's like sushi, we're going to go to Now and Zen, or we'll kind of do it that way.
Good show today.
Yeah.
Tell us about Friday's show. It's a big one.
Friday's a big one. I'm excited about it. We're going to have Sasha Tripp on with Storyhouse and Quentin Beckham of Keller Williams Alliance. So these are two brokers. I have a feeling I'm going to throw a few topics out there, and much like with Neil and Ned or some of the other roundtables we'll do, I'm just going to strap on and see how it goes. So speaking of which, Neil's agreed to come on the 15th.
We love you, Neil Williamson.
And I think Ned, I've got a thumbs up from Ned Galloway, so we're going to
Board of Supervisors.
We're going to talk a little bit of that. I've got the 29th, some city council, and working on some other roundtables. I've kind of took it a little easy on March, as everybody knows, between studying for tests and continuing education and little traveling for Mrs. Smith's 60th. But we're ramping things back up in April, May, and June.
Jennifer has put on Facebook, please remember the history of the building shows.
Yeah, so thank you. It's interesting, and this is a thank you for doing that, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Anybody in the feed who, if you can message me or
DM
me, or you can find my cell number. It's all over the place. I'm having a hard time getting experts to agree to come in front of the cameras and the mics. They're a little nervous about it, and I get that. So I don't want this thing just to be Keith and Jerry. I want to bring in some real experts.
Yeah.
Use
the GIS and get the building owners on there.
Sir, I've been trying that, and
I'll jump in there.
Yeah, well, that's a post-show conversation.
Yeah.
For that thing. Yeah.
Happy to help.
Yeah. So we're working on that.
Cool. Thank you for the reminder there, Jennifer. Any closing thoughts?
Jennifer who? What was?
Jennifer Kraling.
Okay, cool. Thank you,
Yeah,
Jennifer.
yeah.
I
I think I said your last name right, Jennifer.
I love our, I love it when it's just you and I say this all the time, and I really mean it. I enjoy the heck out of your company. I enjoy it sitting across from the table and doing this with a couple of bullet points and just
Fill up 90 minutes.
Just have
Hour and 15.
have a conversation, and then without a doubt, I was having a conversation with the guests for Friday. Quentin knows this, but Sasha wasn't on Real Talk anyway, and and I was trying to explain that we're going to get 2 or 3 bullet points, and then Jerry's fingers are going to fly.
Yeah.
And we'll take it from there.
So tomorrow, Carrie Grigg, Scott
Yeah, I'm
Morrison,
looking forward
Keith
to that.
Smith.
Looking forward to that.
We got the lineup for tomorrow's show already, J-Dubs. Friday, Sasha Tripp and Quentin Beckham
Yep.
with Keith Smith. So
Next Monday, I've got 2 YRP hot shots coming in. Emily again to talk a little bit more about staging and a couple of things, and Jason's coming in, and so we're stacking them up. Looking forward to it.
Fantastic. It's Real Talk on a Tuesday, presented by Yes Realty Partners. We'll continue the conversation with 2 pros, Sasha and Quentin, on Friday, and good to have Keith Smith in the saddle.
Yeah. I'm excited. I've got all the stuff beyond me in March, and I'm starting to feel comfortable in the seat again. So thank you for your patience, everybody. Thank you for your patience and helping me, guide me along.
Our pleasure. The I Love CVille show, guys, is up in 1 hour, and we're excited for what we have in store for you. So mark that show down and join us in 63 minutes on the I Love CVille show. For Keith, Judah, my name is Jerry. This is Real Talk, presented by Yes Realty Partners. So long.